Hi, this is Ruth Chris. I'm a relationship maximizer. I help you maximize and transform all your different relationships. And so we are in our fifth session of Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. This is a book club that we have that meets roughly every 2 weeks. During the summer, it's been a little bit hit and miss due to vacations and whatnot. But that's where we are, and we're going to be talking about 4 subjects today, four subtopics in the first part of this book. And the first one is choice. And this is what Camille says when he starts this section. If there's one thing in life I have excelled at, it's getting in my own way. It was as if as soon as things were going well, I'd find a way to create the biggest obstacle I could find and fall flat on my face. Can you relate? I sure can. I point all these fingers back at me. And was I fearful of success or fearful of failure? And sometimes it's hard to know the difference. But back to what Camille was talking about. This pattern served to help me to keep me unhappy, to definitely not having loving thoughts about myself. He probably thought of himself as a failure. I know that's how I relate to it. I don't know why I did this, he said. Knowing the reason might help, but in the end, the only thing that matters in life is the results. But here is what happened when he started to love himself. I started to notice my patterns, he said. I had no idea I even used to do this. I thought it was my life, the way it was supposed to be. And those patterns didn't disappear overnight. They didn't disappear right away. But as he became more aware of them, they started to disappear because he was making a choice. As he became aware, they no longer was what he called an unconscious choice, which I would probably phrase that more as a subconscious choice. But it became a conscious choice. And eventually, he got tired of the choices he had been making. And I love this next statement that he says. So listen to it very closely. This is the thing about loving yourself. You start to tolerate less what does not serve you, especially from yourself. That thought alone changes your life. You start to tolerate less what does not serve you, especially from yourself. We all have habits and patterns that don't serve us, don't we? And there's a moment of decision where 2 paths stretch out in front of you. One choice is that old familiar way of doing stuff. The other is the unknown. But guess what? Magic lies in the unknown. We're going to go back to a question that's been in the book different times before in different ways. But if I truly loved myself, what would I do? Or would I do this? You can ask that same question to yourself in different ways. But if I truly loved myself at a deep level, would I do X? And he used that question when he was at that crossroads of which path do I want to take? Do I want to take the old familiar path and get the same results that I've always got? Or do I want to go on this new one and let the magic happen? Yes, this one's scary. It's unknown, but that's where the magic is. And he takes that question even deeper. And so if you're ready for that, listen to this. If I loved myself truly and deeply with all my heart, wanting only the very best for myself, Wanting and deserving a magical and beautiful life, would I do this? The choice. The choice is yours. Page is turned over here just a second. It is these moments when you make that choice that define your life. They define your destiny. And these days, more often than not, Camille chose a life of love, a life of magic. What about you? Are you ready to go down that path, that choice of the unknown, and choose a life of love, a life of magic? The second subtopic is called groove. And we talked about this one a little bit before, about the water digging into the rocks and making a deep groove in it. So the water starts going that way rather than the other way. We talked about it with the creating the path in the forest. And the first time you do it, you don't really make much of a difference. But if you do it several times, then you start creating a path. You want to create a groove that transforms you from the inside out. That creates the magic. So if you were ever weakened and old grooves resurface, and in Camille's instance, he was even talking about suicidal thoughts, the new one will go so deep and be so powerful that you see right through the hallucinated snakes. Remember that from one of our other sessions? The hallucinated snakes weren't real. And the guy that was seeing them knew right away that they weren't real. He could tell that difference between the imaginary and the real. And that's what you will start to do the more you love yourself. Let the light in and remove the darkness. And more importantly, if the old grooves return, reach out for help to anyone and everyone. A person who loves themselves throws aside their ego and asks for help because you are worth it. That was a short topic, but a good one. Now we're going to magic. So we had choice, groove, and now we're doing magic. If you can reach the point where you do love yourself, even for a brief moment, it will transform you. And that's a promise from Camille. The key, according to him, has been to let go. Let go of the ego. Let go of attachments. Let go of what you think you should be, who others think you should be. And as you do that, the real you emerges far, far better than the images you try to project to the world. There is a strength in this vulnerability that cannot be described, only experienced. And this will be the real you. It won't be an hallucinated you. The key is being open to loving yourself. Once we do that, life casually takes care of the next steps. What is this magic? It is that you fully accept on the inside this marvelous, amazing human being you are, no matter what the world looks like around you. At your very core, recognize that amazing, marvelous human being you are. And now I'm going to skip over to part 2, where in the manual it talks about magic. It's going to add a little bit more to this. When Camille first started this practice, he got better on the inside. Then life got better on the outside. He can't explain why. life just started to work. The more he loved himself, the more life worked out in ways he could not have planned. He had to use the word magic to describe this. There's no better word. Then he began to expect magic, just like the sun rising each morning. It became his normal. Do not wait for life to show you the magic. Start expecting it. When you look for it, it will find you. But it helps to notice when it starts rather than chalk it up to coincidences, or worse, pay no attention to the magic. Life rewards when you pay attention to its gifts. Our attention is like a spotlight in the darkness. What we focus on becomes our experience of reality. What you expect, you receive. I want to take it to the next level? Then feel grateful when you experience magic. Want to take it even higher? Feel grateful before you experience magic. Just expecting it works. It really does work. And we talked a lot today about gratefulness and how important that is in our lives. And so if you don't have a practice of being grateful, a conscious, intentional practice, I encourage you to start with. Now we're on to our last topic. And this is a kind of difficult one, so we'll take it slow and we'll work it through. It has to do with fear and how fear can be a motivator, but how it can be a negative motivator and not necessarily a positive one. Camille starts it out where he had a discussion with a monk, and the monk said, "To all that happens, I say yes." Now, as we work through this, that'll start to make more sense. And then he started talking about when he had the business that failed and how he was so obsessed with the business, with visions of selling it, making enough money to never work again, the whole 9 yards. You can argue that obsession fuels innovation in our society, and many people feel that it does. True, perhaps. But how often is fear behind that obsession? Fear of what people will think? Fear of letting employees and investors down? This is Camille talking about his business. Fear of failing and what that would mean about you? Camille used the fear as energy, driving him forward, pushing him to achieve, pushing to succeed, paying no attention to his body, to the present and the price he paid. I can relate to that, especially from my years in being in HR management. Often the price for not being present is pain. And this is what the monk meant when he said that beginning statement. There is surrender to what is, to the moment. Whenever he notices fear in his mind, instead of pushing it aside or using it as fuel, he says to himself, "It is okay." A gentle yes to myself, to what the mind is feeling. Often that is enough to deflate the fear, and then he can shift to the truth of loving himself. So when the monk said, "To all that happens, I say yes," and then when he explained it, is when we have thoughts come to our mind, such as fear, we don't push them aside. We don't use them as motivation to get something done. We let our mind and a heart feel it and say it, it's okay. A gentle yes to myself. And often that is enough to deflate the fear. And then you can shift to the truth of loving yourself. And this is the last statement from this section that I'm going to leave with you. Do everything you do from a place of gentleness, of self-love. So feel the fear and then get back to the place of gentleness and loving yourself. And that's the end of session 5. We'll talk to you later.